Joining us now, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin. Mr. Secretary, thanks. Welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Thanks, Brett. It's great to be with you.
I'd like to start with where the coronavirus stimulus bill, the next iteration, stands in the negotiations as of right now.
Well, Brett, the President and I couldn't be more pleased with the way the economic plan is working. We've injected $3 trillion into the economy. People thought we'd get 25% unemployment. Fortunately, it never came close to that. We're down to 8.4. But the President and I believe we should do more stimulus. We have about 7.5 million jobs that we need to get back until we're back to where we were. And we want to help small businesses. We want to help businesses that are particularly impacted by this, and we'll continue to work on proposed new legislation.
So what's the sticking point? Does Speaker Pelosi want this, do you believe?
Well, I think you know, in my discussions with the Speaker, where we're really stuck is both on certain policy issues, but more importantly on the top line. The Speaker has refused to sit down and negotiate unless we agree to something like a $2.5 trillion deal in advance. And, Brett, as you know, we put $3 trillion into the economy when the economy was completely shut down. We've now reopened the economy. Well, let's do a more targeted bill now. If we need to do more in 30 days, we'll continue to do more. But let's not hold up the American workers and American businesses that need more support.
So on the logistics, will Senate Republicans move a so-called skinny bill next week?
I'd like to call it a more targeted bill, not a skinny bill. But yes, our expectation is we'll move forward with that next week.
What exactly did you agree with the Speaker on government funding?
Well, the good news, Brett, is the Speaker and I have agreed. We both don't want to see a government shutdown. So we've agreed that we are going to do a clean CR. We'll do this separately from the CARES Act negotiations. We're having the appropriations staff, the four corners, meet and go through some specific details on it. But the good news is we've agreed on a clean CR, and I hope by the end of the week we can begin moving forward with that, because that's important to the American people.
CR, continuing resolution, how long would that government funding extension last? Through Election Day? Some other timeline?
We haven't agreed on the specific details, but my expectation it would be through the beginning of December. That's what we did this year. We had one through December. We then needed another one into the beginning of next year, and then we had final appropriations. So for now, the most important thing is to make sure at the end of the month we don't shut down the government and we get something past the election.
You know, Mr. Secretary, there has been some vocal criticism from Republicans about you negotiating, saying, in essence, that you're giving away the store. The president's joked that he doesn't know whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. Here's the Wall Street Journal editorial board. Republicans in the age of Donald Trump don't know what they stand for on economics. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin is a Keynesian whose idea of compromise is half of whatever Mrs. Pelosi wants, saying it's a down payment on her election agenda. Your reaction to that criticism, and would it be better to bring the president in, have him get everybody in the Oval Office and try to hammer out a deal?
Well, Brett, let me first say I don't take the Wall Street Journal editorials personally. Sometimes they have good things to say, and sometimes it's nonsense, like this case. As I've said before, I don't agree to anything that I don't review with the president. I speak to the president daily. Our economic plan got us back to an extraordinary reopening of the economy. And the president wanted us to move forward with $3 trillion of spending. That's what we did. It's helped an enormous amount of American businesses and American workers. And the answer is the president constantly has not only his economic team in the Oval Office, but now Mark Meadows and I have been on the phone with Mitch McConnell and the Senate Republicans every single day. Mark and I obviously speak to Kevin McCarthy and the Republicans in the House. But let me be clear, any legislation requires bipartisan support. We couldn't be more proud. The last two bills in the Senate, 100-0 and 96-0. So I find that anything other than complete bipartisan support from both sides.
Most experts looked at Friday's latest jobs report as positive, as you mentioned, strong, beating expectations. Here's how the former vice president characterized it Friday, though.
The report reinforces the worst fears and painful truths. The economic inequities that began before the downturn have only worsened under this failed presidency. When the crisis started, we all hoped for a few months of a shutdown would be followed by a rapid economic turnaround. No one thought they'd lose their job for good.
Your reaction to that?
Well, the former vice president and the former president had one of the longest economic recessions that we've had. Under President Trump, we had the lowest unemployment we've had. We've had the best economy we've ever had. And to no fault of any American businesses, the president made the very difficult decision to shut down the entire U.S. economy because of this terrible COVID disease. Now, the good news is we've reopened it. So, again, let me just say, people thought we'd have 30, 40 million people unemployed. We never did that because of the bipartisan support putting money into the economy. We're now down to 8.4%, and the president's going to get it back down to 3 or 4% where it was before all of this in the beginning of next year when he's reelected.
So 1.4 million jobs added in August. As you mentioned, the unemployment rate down to 8.4%. Looking right now in the current trajectory, what do you think it'll be by Election Day?
I think you're going to see it continue to go down. We're going to have one more employment number this month that you're going to see. I think you're going to see another good number. You're going to see a phenomenal third quarter GDP. Some people think it's going to be in the neighborhood of 30, 35%. Whether it's 25%, 30, 35%, you're going to see this is the American economy rebounding. This is American business. People know when the government gets out of the way and we let American business work, and with a little support from industries that are hardest to hit, and that's why we want more legislation, this economy will fully recover, and the president's job and my job is not done until everybody gets back to work.
I want to go overseas. The country's still in the Iran nuclear deal. Say the U.S. doesn't have standing to do snapback sanctions. Can and will the U.S. go alone on this?
We will. So let me just say we don't agree with that technical analysis at the UN. I think our allies understand that selling arms to Iran right now would be perhaps the worst decision that one can do. We're talking about the #1 country in the Middle East that has created terror around the Middle East. And the president is determined, one, they're never going to have a nuclear weapon, and two, we're not going to let them hurt our friends in the area.
You were not on that trip to France with the president. That's the focus of the Atlantic piece that has received so much attention in the past few days. Administration pushback on the record, but unnamed sources confirming parts of that story, at least parts of the account. Have you ever heard the president use any of that language about veterans, dead or alive, ever being around him?
Bret, quite the contrary. This president supports the military in an unbelievable way. He's created more funding to rebuild the military. That was one of the things he campaigned on, and he delivered. I've been with the president to Arlington on Memorial Day. Let me tell you, I've listened to him there. I've watched him go visit sites there. I've been with him to the anniversary of World War II. It was a very emotional experience. So, no, quite the contrary. I think this president has enormous respect for the military and for the generals. And I've been at the tank at the Pentagon with him. I've been at 9/11 at the Pentagon with him. This president respects and supports the U.S. military.
Well, the president also says he's against the cancel culture. But do you think it's right for him to call for the firing of a reporter who has unnamed sources who confirm parts of that story?
Bret, I really don't know anything about that, so it's just not something I can comment on.
Okay, well, he's tweeted about it, and obviously he says that he wants a reporter who happens to work here at Fox fired.
I've been busy on economic issues, to be honest with you. I focus on a lot of things, and as I said, on the military, I've always heard him to be 150% supportive. I'm just not aware of the issues that you're talking about.
All right, last thing. The CBO says the national debt will reach about the size of the U.S. economy by the end of the year. I've interviewed you many times before and asked you about the growing size of the debt. You look at it, it's approaching $27 trillion. The deficit and the debt concern, you've always said it's, quote, manageable. But after this pandemic, if the president is reelected, would you see a second term, some serious administration plan to address the debt?
I would, Brett. I think before we got into COVID, I thought the debt was very manageable. We were having extraordinary growth. We were creating growth that would pay down the debt over time. Unfortunately, this China virus has cost us trillions of dollars. And as I've said before, this is like a war. In a war, you got to spend whatever you need to spend. So that's the reason why we've spent $3 trillion. We'd spend another $1 trillion. The Speaker wants to just spend unlimited amounts of money. I think the former vice president, if he were elected, would have socialist economic policies that would take the debt out of control. But there's no question in a second term, once the economy is back, we will focus on this issue.
Mr. Secretary, we appreciate your time, and happy Labor Day.
Thank you.